Yes, for
Uh,
sure.
okay, welcome to African Guyanese History. Today we are privileged to have with us Mr. Malik Nasir, and he will share with us his findings on the Sandbach Tinne presence in Guyana. Over to you, Malik.
Hi, Hazel. Thank you so much. I love to be able to share my page and show you what I'm doing with my collection. The host has it disabled, so if you can enable sharing for me, then I'll be happy to share that page. Just while you're working that out, just to give you a little overview as to who I am. So my name is Malik Al Nasser. I'm a fourth year PhD candidate at the University of Cambridge, St. Catherine's College in the UK. And my research is on mercantile hegemony in the latter days of slavery. And it's a case study of Sandbach Tinne and co. And for Guyanese people, they will know the company Sandbach Parker. You'll probably know one of their subsidiaries, Demerara Distillers, who produce the Eldorado rum and the Black Diamond rum and a lot of the fruit juices and so on that you have today. So this firm was started actually in Grenada in 1795. And the person who founded the original firm, the precursor to Sandbach Tinne, was a gentleman called George Robertson. He was a Scotsman who was operating in Grenada, shipping enslaved people from the Gold Coast to the Caribbean, both in Grenada and also on to Guyana. And he took on an apprentice called Samuel Sandbach, who was a young man at the time, whose uncle, who was also called Samuel Sandbach, had slave plantations in Grenada. This is prior to Phaedon's rebellion. And what we came to understand when we did the research was that George Robertson apprenticed two young men, both Samuel Sandbach, the younger, the nephew, and also a man called Charles Stewart Parker. And both of them, having apprenticed with George Robertson, married two of his nieces. And having married the nieces, came into the family. Now, to give you an idea of the volume of business that they were doing in slavery, George Robertson died in 1799, leaving £250,000 in day of death, which is billions in today's money. But before he died, they operated in Grenada and they formed a partnership called Robertson Parker. Charles Stewart Parker having made an initial investment of £1,000 to come into partnership with George Robertson. They eventually made a 50-50 partnership. And when George Robertson died, that partnership was dissolved. When that partnership was dissolved, other partnerships were formed, by which time Samuel Sandbach had also sort of entered the fray, become a shareholder, and him and Charles Stewart Parker brought in 1813 Philip Frederick Tinne, who was working at the Court of Policy. And as a consequence of that collaboration, the firm Sandbach Tinne was born, which had operations in Glasgow, Liverpool, and Demerara. So they owned numerous plantations. To name a few, Vredenhoop, Leonora, Providence, Industry. At one point, they owned Brothers. There's a whole range of other plantations that they owned, too numerous to mention here. And some of the business partners owned plantations in their own right. The one that was particularly of interest to me was Peter Miller Watson. Peter Miller Watson owned Plantation Le Bon Intention and one-third of Plantation Zeebrugge. He also, as a family member, as the grandson of the founder George Robertson, who died who was from Grenada and who come to Guyana after Phaedon's rebellion of 1795 and then died in Demerara in 1799. Peter Miller Watson ran the Sandbach Tinne operation as well as his own plantations and would constantly write letters to Samuel Sandbach in the UK and Charles Stewart Parker in Glasgow, in Scotland. And those letters, many of them ended up in various different collections around the world. And what I'm trying to do is identify those collections and bring them together and reunite them digitally so we can put together the history of this firm. This firm was so influential on the British Empire that it becomes a really, really sort of massive forensic operation. to understand the level of influence. I've just recently noticed from the Guyanese Genealogical Society that they have published a list of the shareholders of the Demerara Railway. And you will find Henry Watson witnessed about 90% of the share purchases that took place at the foundation of the Demerara Railway. So Henry Watson was the brother of Peter Miller Watson, and they were he was one of three brothers who were coming from Scotland, part of this family, who were involved in both colonial administration and also running slave plantations. His brother William ran a plantation as an overseer in Berbice, and we believe that Henry was actually in Myakone. So you'll find now Watson families in Myakone and Berbice. I've also found some in Clonbrook and Georgetown. And what I'm doing here at the moment is I've come to Guyana really just to try and unite the knowledge base, if you like, from each of those Watson family members, because I myself derived from that family. My father was Reginald Wilcox Watson, who was born in Grove in East Bank, Demerara on the 30th of March, 1918. My grandfather was George Edward Watson. I'm trying to find his birth and his death. But I found my cousins who also had him as a grandfather. So their parent, two of my cousins in Rosignol, their father and my father were brothers, and we share a common grandfather in George Edward Watson, who we believe taught school in Belladrum and at one point lived in Weldad and had land in Rosignol. So I'm here trying to sort of unite all the knowledge of the various different family members, close some of the gaps in our historical knowledge from a genealogical standpoint, but also to connect to the plantation owners and these colonial administrators that made up the family and the mercantile entities of Sandbach Tinne, which is the foundation, if you like, of my PhD research. So in terms of the documentation that I've managed to obtain so far, I'm currently digitizing that documentation and transcribing it for the purposes of being able to launch a digital archive on Cambridge Digital Library. So if you look at my screen share, you will see the staging post, if you like, for this archive. As you can see, it's University of Cambridge. We're in the process at the moment of digitizing all of these. These are my correspondences. They are many. If you sort of hone in on some of them, you will see, who was writing to who, what they were talking about. So a letter like this, for instance, sorry, my internet connection is a bit slow, is signed by Peter M. Watson, who is Peter Miller Watson, the father of the famous black footballer, Andrew Watson, his son, who came to the UK and captained the Scottish national football team in the 1880s. Unfortunately, the internet connection is so slow here at the moment. These high resolution images are not going to easily download. Otherwise, I could show you a lot more. But much of the information that I have in this archive pertains to Guyana. So, for instance, and people who are involved in Guyana, I have a photo album of 19th century, what we call carte de visite. Again, it's taking some time to load here, so we'll just give it a minute. And these carte de visite are photographs of Sandbach Tinne family members. I think that's not going to load, unfortunately, because of the slowness of this internet connection. But that gives you a sort of an idea that over 600 photographs from the 19th century of individual family members, as well as, so you can see one example here. I think this one's loaded. And we have sort of metadata relating to this. But yeah, the internet connection is too slow, so please excuse me for that. But that will give you an, oh, here we go. He's coming in bits. Now, this is Henry Robertson Sandbach. So people will know him as the brother of, sorry, the son of Samuel Sandbach, who inherited his Haffadunus Hall, which was a 5,000-acre estate in Denbighshire, all paid for with the proceeds of slavery, mostly accrued in Demerara. They had a shipping line. This is one of their ships. It was a steamship called the Demerara. This is something from the archive that I found. Some of the colonial administrators who were out here, wearing their colonial regalia. I never really got to find out who those particular individuals were. And there are many
Oh,
photos.
just a minute, Malik. We are running out of time, but as my students say to me, we can break for 5 minutes and then return, and you can then continue the presentation if that's fine with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll break for